Sports Talk 1080 The Team, Orlando's Tuck and O'Neill with Mike Tuck. I'm Jerry O'Neill. Got the basketball out. It's March. March Madness is here. Committee's got a lot of decisions to make. Obviously, there's going to be a bunch of bubble teams by the time the weekend conference tournaments are completed. So they're doing their due diligence. If you're a member of the committee, what do you influence them with most?
I think the biggest thing I look at is the number they use is top 100 wins, but basically it insinuates quality wins, both in your conference. If you're in a major conference, most of those wins are top 100. If you're in a smaller conference, obviously out of conference gets emphasized when you look at top 100 wins. It tells me that you are competing with and your success rate against teams that are in the NCAA tournament field. To me, that's the biggest thing I'd focus on.
Yeah, I don't think there's much doubt about it. That's a given. Beyond that, I mean, if you've got to narrow it down, you know, when you say how you've played lately, well, that really depends on the caliber of your schedule. You know, as we've seen,
Right.
Some of these teams, they're loaded for bear early in their conference season, and then there's a bit of a break, or vice versa. Or when there's a 14-team conference like the SEC, like the ACC, they have 15, and the Big Ten with 14, you only play, you know, the 13 one time, and then you play 5 others a second time. Well, you may have been very fortunate and got the lucky draw to end up playing a schedule either, you know, very, very light, or just the opposite, very, very heavy.
Yeah.
And they're going to have to take that into account, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, they officially eliminated the last 10 a couple of years ago, but I do think how you finish matters. But your point, I think, is very good.
Sure.
Because it does depend who you're playing. You have to look closer at, you know, I think, where you were with players being injured and if you suffered losses and things like that. Obviously, when I say top 100, you emphasize more top 50, emphasize more top 25. The higher you go, the better the wins are, the more they matter. I'm not as worried about bad losses, you know, teams that are outside the top 100, because you are going to get upset during the course of a season. You don't want a lot of those. I think those can hurt. And the other thing I think you look at is road wins. There are so many teams that stockpile home wins during a basketball season that I think neutral site and road wins and how you do on the road, I think is very important, especially when you get to the back end of the bubble. The top end teams are going to get it anyway, but to the bubble, I want to know that you've gone on the road and you won some games, or you won some neutral site games early in the season.
And you know, we always talk about there is no such thing as a moral victory, and I agree with that. But on the other hand, if you're scrutinizing as a committee, you have to look at some of that as well.
Yeah.
Did we compete on the road? Hey, we got beat, but we got beat 3 with the game was tied with a minute to play, and they made free throws, and we missed a bunny. And, you know, I don't know how much information they have about that, but I think those are valid concerns as well.
Those are real basketball conversations. You're absolutely right. You look at, okay, maybe they were 2-6 on the road, but 5 of those games came down to the final possession.
Right.
And yeah, I absolutely agree.
And then I think as well, you're going to have to look at conference strength. And that's the eye test, as well as how they played outside. But the ability for these guys who sit on this committee is to study. That's your job, is to prepare. And some of that's going to come into play as well. It's not just all black and white. It's not just all numbers. But it is looking at the conference as a whole, how they competed throughout the course of the year against non-conference stories and within, and how strong they were.
And it's tricky. That's why I don't even concern myself with what your conference record was.
Right.
Because it's such an unbalanced schedule within conferences that, you know, that just because you were 8-8 and another team was 10-6, your 8-8 might be a lot more impressive because maybe they played the bottom 3 teams twice each and they stockpiled some wins there. So, but you're right, how the conference as a whole performed outside, it gives you a better idea of the competition within your own conference.
And now, obviously, we get to this every year where usually there are a handful of teams who don't make the field or who edge their way in. And it's difficult. It's difficult to say no to some of these teams. I don't agree. I honestly don't agree with the at-large bids where they say, well, they don't have a chance to win it all anyway. If you're in the tournament, especially this year, and you're in a good matchup, as tight as a lot of these games are, we saw how many times top 25 teams, top 10 teams, 5 teams lost this year. It's historic compared to other years in the recent past. You get in, you have a chance. You're going to win 2 games 3 weeks in a row. That's not impossible for a long laundry list, and I think including some of those who may have made the tournament by this far.
Yeah, and maybe you can't win it all, but we've seen George Mason and VCU in the last 10 years be one of the last teams in, get to the Final Four. So it does matter, and I know they take their job seriously, and hopefully we won't have too big of an argument on Monday about all this.
We're the home of March Madness. We had all the games, including a full slate of games both Thursday and Friday after the first 4 games on Tuesday and Wednesday of next week from Dayton. We're Tuck and O'Neill. We talk about it weekdays 3 to 7, Sports Talk 1080 The Team Orlando.